All right, we are going to get started. So, thank you everyone for being here. Like I said, this is our first session of August of the Eagle webinar series. So, we are super excited to have you all here. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening to come learn some really important things about on campus jobs and work study here at American University. My name is Anna Spacek. I serve as the Associate Director for Family Engagement within the New Student and Family Programs Office here. We have a bunch of really fun and cool webinars happening all throughout the fall semester. So again, thank you all for continuing to be engaged and showing up. We're excited to continue to make sure that you all learn some important campus resources as well as successful things to help your transition to American University, whether you're a first year, second year, third year, you're a family supporter or a student. We are really, really thankful to have you here tonight. So I'm going to pass it over to our presenters. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat and we'll save some time at the end to get those questions answered. But thank you all for being here. We're going to get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. We can do a quick introduction of ourselves, and then my lovely colleague will be taking the first part of this presentation. I'm JJ Medina. I'm the manager of HR staff and student administration here at AU. That's just a fancy way of saying that all the staff and student HR related things come to my team. I am the main point of contact for student workers. We do all the things from onboarding all the way through till when they graduate and move on to other jobs, to even after that when they ask for verification of employment. We're the main point of contact for student workers on campus, and I'm very happy to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Coley. I serve as the Associate Director of Financial Aid over the Federal Work Study Program, which means I am the contact person to pretty much allocate out and award federal work study funds, as well as partner with some off-campus federal work study sites to try to get our students hired. I thank you all for joining us this evening.
Alrighty. If you are all set, we can just jump in. We're gonna go over federal work study generally, kind of what it is, FAQs, etc. And then I'll go over kind of the nitty-gritty of how to find a campus job and all the things that you need to keep in mind for that.
Thank you. Okay, so first things first, before I jump into this first slide, just a little overview on what federal work study is. So the Federal Work Study Program is a federal financial aid program that provides both undergraduate and graduate students with part-time jobs, either on campus or off campus, to help pay for, educational expenses. These are awards that are need-based, determined through the FAFSA. And even though in most cases, if a student is eligible for federal work study, not every student who is eligible qualifies. And that is only because every school is given limited funding amount of federal work study funds. Just a little backstory on that. So now we will jump into why the program exists. As I previously mentioned, it provides part-time jobs so students can earn money for education costs. It is federally funded and administered by our financial aid office. And the work schedule is scheduled to work around students' classes, either on campus or with an approved off-campus partner. We never want our students to pick up hours or trying to work when their schedule has them, in class. Their main focus on campus is to be focused on their classes. So any position that they have will have to work around their school schedule. And the program exists to build work experience, skills, and of course, get our students a paycheck while they're here. Students gain eligibility, number one, by filling out the FAFSA and, of course, listing American University as one of their school choices. The FAFSA does have to demonstrate financial need, meaning that the student aid index, formerly known as the expected family contribution, has to be under the Department of Education's threshold for them to be eligible for federal work study. Um, they would have to apply by the priority deadline. For continuing students, that would be by May 1. And or we send out plenty of reminders to let students know when they need to apply. Students do need to be enrolled in at least half-time and stay in good academic standing, meaning they must be meeting SAP. For federal regulations, SAP is the satisfactory academic progress, meaning the student must be maintaining at least a 2.0 GPA to, receive federal aid, and that does include federal work study. And then the student would have to accept the award in their student aid portal. And I will go over a little bit how to do that in a later slide. So, keeping your award or your award and keeping it each year. The yearly allocation for incoming students, incoming freshmen, is $3,000. There is a chance that typically for continuing students or next year, your students could be awarded up to $4,000 if eligible. And of course, this $3,000 is earned through hourly wages, across the academic year, and it does not apply directly to your tuition or bill. So if your student has been awarded federal work study and you kind of notice in Eagle Service you don't see it under the account summary, federal work study will never be applied to the bill because those are funds that will be paid to the student in exchange for their work. So it will come to them as a paycheck. The renewal requirements would be, of course, to refile the FAFSA every year, submitted by the priority deadline of May 1st, to show continued financial need. So there can't be any extreme changes in your FAFSA from year over year. If your student aid index does jump a little higher, it may knock you out of eligibility. So as long as it stays around the same, the student more than likely will be eligible again the next year. And again, as stated, the student have to meet satisfactory academic progress, which is maintaining the required 2.0 GPA, pace of completion, and enrollment level. And then the most important, stay actively employed. Work your scheduled hours. And unfortunately, unused funds do not roll over to the next year. So if a student is awarded $3,000 and they only work enough to earn $2,000, that 1,000 unfortunately does not roll over to the next year. It would just kind of disappear or go back to Department of Ed in some sort. There are two different types of work study. So there's regular federal work study, which is on-campus locations, such as the library or the cafe or things of that nature. And then there's something called public service work study. So this is work study that allows our students to earn financial aid by working jobs off campus with either a nonprofit or private sector position. Now, we do currently have 4 partnerships right now for public service work study. Annunciation Catholic School, Raising a Village, Ollie, and Kid Power. Almost all of the positions for work study for these locations are a tutoring role, meaning that they are either reading or doing math work with students, grades K through 8. And if any of your students have questions or specifically interested in the public service work study portion of this, they are more than welcome to see me or reach out and I can provide them with additional information on that. And then some common questions that we get. Is work study a loan? No. Work study is earned by the worker. You do not have to pay it back. If you do not utilize it, you're not penalized. It's a choice. It's available for you if you are able to secure a work study position. It's not something that you have to pay back. That is a question we do get often. How many hours per week? So typically, like students to stay between a 5 to 7 hour um, per week because we want to schedule it around your class commitments. We don't want to take away time from studying or that you should be focusing on your classes. How to accept the financial aid award. So to accept the financial aid award, it would be just like accepting any other award that you may have received from financial aid, such as merit or loans. You would log into your Eagle Service portal and you would click on the View and Accept Awards and scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on Federal Work Study. This is extremely important because if you are hired by a Federal Work Study location, you are unable to start working if you have not accepted your award because how would they pay you? So we definitely want to make sure that You do that first. On to how we get paid. So, federal work study students do receive a regular paycheck for hours worked directly to the student, just like any other employee of American University. Does federal work study affect next year's aid? Work study earnings are reported and treated favorably on the FAFSA, but does not necessarily affect the aid for the next year. No. And can the award change? Yes. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you're submitting your FAFSA for the next year and your student aid index has increased for whatever reason, mom got a raise or promotion, or something has happened where those finances have taken a jump, it can affect eligibility when completing the FAFSA, as it depends on the annual need. Also, it can be affected by funding. Like I mentioned previously, Department of Education does allot every institution a certain amount, excuse me, of federal work study funding. So it can be affected by that. And of course, your academic standing. If you have the need on your FAFSA, and you are awarded, but you are not making SAP and you just didn't do well that last semester, unfortunately, you would not be eligible to do federal work study until you are in good academic standing. Okay. And again, if you guys think of any additional questions, I am keeping an eye on a chat. Oh, would it make sense for my student to get a job if she's leaving to study abroad in the spring? So if she's leaving to study abroad in the spring, but will be there for the fall, they can do work study for the fall, but not for the spring.
Correct. When they're studying abroad, they cannot work because we can't have people working from other countries for tax and legal reasons. But there are plenty of students who have jobs, they go to study abroad, and then they come back into their old job, actually. They get rehired into that position. So completely fine to look for um, work for the semester that she's here.
Okay. And JJ, I didn't know if you want me to go through these questions now, or do you want to wait until the end and I can just
Um,
jot them down?
Yeah, we can go through those at the end. I know we're going to leave a little
Okay,
bit of
cool.
time to go through questions. So we'll just finish this out and then we can go through all those questions for you. We might answer some of those in the rest of this. So okay, so how to actually find a job. As Sharon mentioned, in order to be paid for federal work study, you need a job to be paid. And also, we also have just regular student wages. So even if your student didn't qualify for a federal work study position or for federal work study funding, they can still get a student on campus job. And the way that you find those jobs is exactly the same, regardless of whether it's a federal work study or a non-federal work study regular student wages job. So I recorded just a screen grab that I'll play while I talk so that you can all see. I didn't want to have to close the Zoom down or the PowerPoint down to share my screen, so I just recorded it. This is a really great page that our Career Center put together. Our Career Center is really awesome and really wants to help students get jobs, not only when they graduate, but they have a bunch of resources for while they're currently in a student. So they have this link to on-campus student jobs, and that actually goes directly to our AU job board. This is where all of our jobs are posted, but this is filtered to student, and if it wasn't, you can always filter based on the job category there. And you can see here there's 49 jobs. I actually just went and looked and there's 75 jobs posted right now, and that's just student jobs. All of them are if it's federal work study specific, it will say FWS or federal work study. Most of them are able to be used for federal work study, with a couple caveats, which all those people know. You can't use it for like fundraising or political type work, but for most, like 90% of the jobs, if not more percent of the jobs, are eligible for federal work study funding and also as a regular student wage. So you would just they would go through and look for whatever is interesting to them and they can apply. And then once they do this first section and fill all this out, it'll actually save their information. So they can just apply to whatever jobs they find interesting that one they just want a job, right? But two, if they have specific interests or specific experience, they can go through and find the ones that match their interests. We have student jobs in almost every single department, doing a variety of work. So really encourage people to look through the job board, which kind of brings me to the next thing is just general tips that students sometimes overlook. One, like I mentioned, there was 49 there. I think we're at 75 today. There are postings added regularly, and our recruiting team does a really good job of trying to not let things sit for over a month. So they're constantly refreshing and adding new postings as departments are getting ready to hire. As I mentioned, most student jobs can use federal work study funds. There are very few couple of exceptions. Those departments know that they can't use federal work study funds, but if you have a student who has federal work study funds, encourage them to apply to jobs, even if it doesn't explicitly say federal work study. We're working really hard, and the financial team has been working really hard with us to make sure that our students are using those federal work study funds, because as was mentioned, it's a use it or lose it type system. So we want to make sure that they are using those funds. So absolutely, even if it doesn't explicitly say federal work study, apply and there will be a question that asks whether or not they have federal work study. They are limited to one federal work study job, so they can't have multiple federal work study jobs, but they can have multiple jobs, just not two federal work study jobs. There is a requirement that we only have one. The other tips that I have for students is talking to friends, professors, and staff members. It's much like the real world, right? Like having that network and building that network is super important. Um, Professors love to have students who maybe in the upperclassmen years become research assistants or teaching assistants. And we absolutely do we work really hard to make sure everyone has a fair chance by making sure everything gets posted, everybody has a chance to apply to it. But also, as we all know, it's really good to have, you hear that somebody is hiring something soon, you can be on the lookout for it and be at the top of that pile that by being an early applicant, which goes back to checking the postings often and applying widely, right? And the last thing I already mentioned, the Career Center has a bunch of resources to help students write resumes, practice interview skills, and like I showed at the beginning, a bunch of resources for finding jobs while they're still on campus. They also have a bunch of information around like internships and all these other things. And the Career Center has been doing a really good job in helping our students get prepared. So just plugging them. We will share this slide deck at the end after this. Anna's going to send it out to everybody. And there are resource links, and one of the links that I have on there is the Career Center. So absolutely encourage your students to use that. It's really, really good information. So let's say they applied widely, they had an interview, they got hired, but the student still needs to actually get in the system, right? And this is something that has been a little lost in translation sometimes, so we just want to make sure to say it explicitly. They've been hired, and the department gets them into Workday, which is the system we use, but they still have to do things to get paid. They have to log into Workday, completing all the onboarding tasks, which are all the annoying things that we all do every time we get a new job, the personal information, the tax elections, and especially the I-9. And the reason I'm mentioning the I-9 here with you all is because they have to complete it within 3 business days of their start date. However, in order to complete it, they need access to their physical documents. These are things like the passport, their ID, social security card, those types of things. We do offer virtual appointments. So if they don't have it with them, the parents are also able to join and show it. But we just wanted to plug, after 3 business days, they do have to be termed if they don't do it. So we're just working to make sure that our students have the documents they need on the day that they have it. And these are the helpful links that I mentioned earlier. So we will make sure to have this available to you all. There's also the general financial aid email address, and HR payroll help, which is how to get in contact with my team. And we are more than happy to help and assist students on that, on anything as they go from getting their offer for any sort of financial aid all the way to um, getting paid after they get hired and have been working in their job. Um, and now I believe we have some questions to go through.
Yes, I was trying to keep track of them.
Do you have a couple you want to start with?
So yes, the SAI threshold. Oh, I just had a brain blank on what SAI stood for just that fast. Student Aid Index, formerly the EFC. So the SAI threshold on FAFSA, it's about 14,000. However, the financial aid office reviews any SAI 35,000 and under. So even if the FAFSA does not say that your student is eligible for federal work study, we do have a little bit of wiggle room that we are looking at any SAI 35K and under and can award for federal work study if your student is interested.
Do you want to say a little bit more about work study no being available, Sharon?
Oh, yes. So I'm assuming this question means is work study no longer possible for this upcoming year? So, yes, work study is still available. We are still awarding students for this upcoming year if your student is eligible. Like I mentioned before, if it is not automatically on their award letter because maybe they were a little bit higher than the 14,000 SAI for Department of Ed, but not as high as the 35,000. They can reach out to our office and we can definitely, look at that and get them awarded if that's something that they're interested in. It's still possible for the year. And, we will be reviewing work study eligibility throughout the year.
Um, Great. And Ava, they will be paid bi-weekly. We are on a bi-weekly pay schedule for all our hourly employees, which includes students. Is work study income taxed by the state of residence or the state of the university? So,
Mhm.
this is a good question. So, federal work studies income, there is paid as part of income. Students are not subject, sorry, full-time students are not subject to FICA withholding. Um, and we, as the university, are registered to operate in DC. They will be taxed in DC unless they have a residence in Maryland or Virginia, in which case, because of the reciprocal agreements that exist, you can be taxed in Maryland or Virginia. But otherwise, you will be taxed as of in DC because that's where we are operating and where the student is employed. And
Mm,
if they have more questions about that once they get started, they can talk to payroll, who are the experts on the tax stuff. That's just a very little bit that I know.
It does look like the next one says, is a federal work study job guaranteed if your student is eligible? This is also a very good question because we get this a lot in the financial aid office. So unfortunately, a federal work study job is not guaranteed because the student is applying for that position and interviewing for that position, much like it could be 15 students also applying for those same positions. So they're not guaranteed. However, there are a plethora of federal work study positions available. They're not always one guaranteed that is either going to work with your student schedule or just what they, would want to do as a position, unfortunately.
Yeah, and related to that, there's a few different questions about whether federal work studies gets preference or whether there are federal work study specific jobs. There are jobs that are specifically federal work study, and they're generally designated as such on the job board. Like I mentioned, most jobs are available to use federal work study funding. Um, there isn't necessarily an explicit preference given, but it is a question, and I would say that it doesn't hurt to have external funding, right? But we try very hard, and there are like there are almost 100 positions right now. I know that there are more in the queue that are just waiting to be posted. There are a ton of student positions that it's just we're also dealing with a ton of students too. So making sure that you apply regularly is and are open to doing not just the one tiny niche that you are that the student is very interested in, and being open to a wide range of positions is going to help them find a position. Uh, are the jobs minimum wage? What is the wage in DC? So our minimum wage is the minimum wage in DC, which is 1840. There are some opportunities for slightly higher depending on the specifics, like if a student is a lead for a team or something like that. Sometimes there are higher paying positions, but generally our student positions start at minimum wage, which is currently 1840. And I think it's set to go up next year again, but it just went up in July to 1840.
Yes. And JJ, just to piggyback off of that, some are public service work study positions or our nonprofits off campus do typically start students off at least 20 and up. So they do go a little bit higher for the public service. I'm sorry, go a little bit higher than the minimum wage of 1840. So there are opportunities out there.
Who should my student contact if she is having trouble completing the job application? So if she's just having technical issues, she can email that HR payroll help email, and we'll get her in contact with the recruiters to help her troubleshoot that. It tends to be relatively user friendly, but if she runs into issues, that's the HR payroll help is a good it gets to the correct team within HR, even if they're not the ones who get it initially. So
Mhm.
that's the best place to start for any of those types of questions. Are jobs filled per semester or just at the beginning of fall? If my freshman wants to wait to apply for second semester, is that possible? Yeah, absolutely. Jobs open throughout the academic year and even some during the summer. So there are constantly refreshing. Obviously, at the fall, that's when the biggest bulk of hiring happens, because a lot of students then will work throughout the academic year in that position. Because departments, if they like the person and the person likes the department, they just continue working in that position. But we constantly have different student positions as different opportunities come available. So absolutely not a problem at all. There's definitely, we call it a mini rush in the spring because it is definitely a little smaller, but there's still definitely a rush for hiring and at that point. If we apply through the website for a job, when should we expect to hear something back? Our place is interviewing for the year yet for campus jobs. Yes, there is hiring happening now for fall. We're kind of hitting our stride for the gear up for everybody to join us. So absolutely start looking through those and start applying. The closer we get to the semester start, sometimes there will be a little bit of a gap while departments are getting everybody on campus. So there's a little bit like a week or two where people just get very busy welcoming everybody, especially specific units that are very student facing. But there are continual hires happening right now. So hopefully be hearing soon. Our recruiting team also every month or so will go and check in with hiring managers and close down requisitions who that have finished, if they decided not to fill that position, what have you, to make sure that you hear back. You get a disposition email to let you know that job requisition is closing. So even if you do not get that specific job, you should still hear back that about that position, if that makes sense. Can incoming freshmen apply for jobs for fall 2026? Yes, absolutely. Um, the job board that I showed you all, you can apply externally. You don't need to be logged in yet. We will check the enrollment status before we actually process the hire. But absolutely, freshmen are eligible to apply for jobs. And if they have federal work study, they should be applying for jobs in order to be able to use that. Um, what does termed mean if an I-9 is late? So, federal law requires us to have an I-9 on file for all of our workers. If they don't complete that form, we're not able to validate that they have authorization to work. So we have to end their position until they are able to complete that. They're still eligible to be rehired if they don't do that, but we're just trying to avoid that at all because the student has to stop working if we have to stop and then rehire them to let them do the I-9 afterwards. So we're just trying to avoid that gap where student loses days where they're able to work. So that's just what that means. Yeah, the student board has jobs for all student jobs are posted on the student board. We have a requirement internally that all especially all undergrad student jobs are posted for a minimum of 5 days. So every single job, and most of them are up for longer than that, but it's just our minimum is 5 days. So everybody has a chance to apply, and all those are for both work study and non-work study. I've applied to several jobs. You're not doing anything wrong. We're hitting our stride for all this. We're dealing with volume, and also just getting towards this. The units have kind of come out of summer and are now gearing up and starting to do interviews and that kind of stuff. So absolutely keep applying. Like I said, apply often and apply widely. And you will all of the jobs that are open right now should start hearing back from hiring managers soon. They can start applying now. The interviews and stuff are happening now. They are not eligible to start working until after move-in. But they're allowed to start applying now. As far as specific people, it's hard for me to say without knowing the specifics of the circumstance. There we have a lot of jobs, so it's kind of just like the regular job market. It's kind of it depends on who sees your resume and the timing in which you apply. So where you're at on the and we review all our candidates, but it's just the realities of applying for jobs, unfortunately, is you're competing with a lot of other people. So there are I can't speak to specific circumstances, but we do a pretty hard job in making sure that everything gets posted and everybody gets a fair look. But again, it is a job market, just like any other job market. Um, Anybody who needs accommodations for any sort of disability, there's if you go to the job board, there's information for how to contact to get in for any sort of accommodations information. I don't work with that specifically, so I don't want to speak to what we have for that. But absolutely there's resources on the job page.
And JJ, really quick, can before you answer the question, can you just read it out loud to repeat it for those who might not have read it or heard it?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. The last question was, do you cater to disabled students? And there are accommodations available, but I don't want to speak to those without knowing the specifics, but there are resources that you can find for that. If a job says federal work study on the listing, non-federal work study students can also apply. So I would say that if it says federal work study specifically, they are only hiring federal work study. The opposite, if it doesn't say federal work study students can still apply. Um, the reason there are a few different reasons for that, but a lot of it has to do with funding. And so if it says federal work study specifically, then that means it's specifically for a federal work study. Whereas if it just says student, anybody can apply to that.
Mhm.
If I am a non-federal work study, can I work multiple jobs? Yes, there you can have multiple jobs as a student, and you can even have multiple jobs as a federal work study student. You just can only have one federal work study job. Um, that being said, you need to be able to prioritize work, so keep all that in mind, but you are able to have multiple jobs on campus. You are limited to minimum or a maximum number of hours because you still have to be classified as part-time. So you can't work more than, we don't recommend you work more than 20. There's a little bit of a higher number depending on a couple different situations, but around 20 hours per week across your jobs. What percentage of eligible students actually get a federal work study job? I don't know that I have that figure. Sharon, do you have any idea about? I think we're
Um,
trying to find that, get more data around that, but we haven't
I
been
do
able to.
not, but I can
Yeah.
definitely put that out to see if something that we can get a get an idea of.
Yeah, good question. I don't have that answer readily available, but we can do some digging and see if we can find out for the future. Students can apply now. The interview will be online as school hasn't started yet. So interviews are set up by the hiring manager when they reach out. You can talk to them. Everybody is able to do like Zoom interviews at this point. So I would say more than likely you're going to be able to do one, but it's going to depend on the specific job. So just talk to the hiring manager um when you are get that contact for that position. Um in the address line in the application, should you write your address or the hall that you will live in? For the actual application, you can use your home address if you want. When you actually onboard and create your employee profile, we do need your local address listed as your primary address because of those tax reasons that I mentioned. So you will put your actual hall and your dorm information when you onboard. There's an opportunity to update that. If I apply to multiple jobs and get selected for more than one, do I get to choose which one I want to work, or am I required to work all the ones I am accepted to? No, you are not obligated to take a job that you are offered. Um, you I would recommend that you talk to the hiring managers and let them know, and take it as a opportunity to develop those professional skills in talking through those things. But you absolutely, if you get two jobs and are only planning on working one, and one fits more squarely in like what you want to do in the future, it's completely okay to choose that one as opposed to the other one. The most important thing is just communicating with the hiring managers as you get those opportunities. I think we hit everything, but if we missed one of your questions, there were quite a few. Feel free to drop it again, but I'm down to the bottom, so I think we hit all of the questions. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Again, we will send this information out and it's going to send it out to everybody so that you have these resources. And students can feel free to reach out to both myself and financial aid for assistance as they get onboarded and get going. And we're super happy to welcome them to AU.
Yes, and one thing I just wanted to throw out there is a shameless plug. There is an on-campus and part-time employment fair happening in September. That will have plenty of positions and jobs open as well as public service work study. So you can walk around, kind of get a feel for what's out there, meet and greet, and hopefully that, kind of helps out.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you, Sharon and JJ, for taking time out of your evening to come present to everyone. We greatly appreciate it. As JJ said, we will send all this information out, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. But moving forward, our next Eagle Family webinar will be from Destination DC. It will be towards the end of August, so to get you hype about coming back to DC and all the cool things that you can take part in. Throughout your time in the city. So we hope to see you all there, but we hope you have a great night and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.
September, yes, the job fair. There will be messaging coming out. Don't worry about it. We'll include it in the